The Affinity is an excellent 3D printer. It excels at things such as ease of use and support material generation. One of the things that it sort of lacks is sort of customizability in the sense of it's designed to work with an OEM filament that melts roughly at about 265 degrees Celsius. So if you want to use like cheaper third-party filament, or I say more inexpensive third-party filament, or specialty filaments such as 618 nylon, T-glaze, things like that, it's been you haven't had as much flexibility. One thing that Octave came out with, Octave.com came out with, was a temperature switch. This is basically a single setting, basically two setting. One is it will bypass the switch. One setting will lower it to what is more a industry standard ABS temperature of about 235 degrees Celsius. Using sort of the same principle, Octave has come out with two additional switches. There's an A-temperature switch and there's a multi-temp switch. And what this does is it works on a very similar process. There is a temperature unit in here that can detect the temperature, and it basically, whatever the resistance of the temperature sending unit or of the temperature unit is, the motherboard interprets what the correct temperature is. So by adding in a resistor inline with it, you can trick the machine into thinking that it's hotter than it is, which will result in a lower extruding temperature. What this does is what the new switches do is basically the same, it's the same process, but with some more functionality. If we look at the A-temperature switch first, the A-temperature switch essentially just has 8 switches, and underneath this cover there's 8 different resistors. So these have been pre-selected to be, it's about 6 or 7 degree increments. So the first switch setting is actually a bypass, much like the original temperature switch had a bypass. And then each of the other temperature settings, they sort of decrease in temperature. And the idea with this is that you would just select the temperature that you want to extrude at, and if you want to change the temperature, you basically just select another setting from the switch. And there's sort of basic instructions on the switch face here. For more advanced users, there's a multi-temperature switch, and what this does is it actually puts resistors in different combinations of different parallel combinations, and so you actually end up with, if we use the first switch as a bypass, then we have 7 resistors in here and 7 different switches, and we can actually get 128 different possible temperature combinations. Some of them aren't ideal, but if you refer to the documentation on Octave.com, you can generally get 1 degree increments from 268 degrees Celsius to about 200 degrees Celsius. So pretty much anything you want to extrude that, I haven't really seen anything that extrudes at a lower temperature than that. There is a PLA mode on the machine also, but so pretty much, anything between 200 and the default extrusion temperature of about 265, you're going to be able to extrude at by basically selecting combinations of switches. And there's some documentation on Octave's website as far as what settings you need to do. And so next video I'll go into sort of the installation of these switches. It's very similar to the single temperature switch.